Hey everyone, Tyler here at The Movie Beat, back with another video update. I did want to give some additional thoughts on the brand new Korean film Josee that I just saw a couple days ago, gave my reaction and review, and I also said that I was going to perhaps check out the Japanese original that it was based on, try to give a couple additional thoughts on how these two films compared. At first I was thinking I might not even go check it out because I felt pretty satisfied with the Korean version. But something about the film just kept me thinking about it, and I was like, I'm really curious on the source of this. And I did look into it. Apparently, even the Japanese film was based on a short story that I think got like serialized or something into some type of a continuing thing. But obviously, this film, Josee the Tiger and the Fish, has connected with a lot of people out there just because, you know, this original film, the Japanese one that I want to talk about, came out like 17 years ago. And the fact that it's being remade, there's actually an anime version of this thing coming at the end of December. So something's here, guys. We're going to try to find it. But basically, the differences between these two films, the Korean one and the Japanese one, were kind of major, I have to say. So this one's going to have some spoilers. If you haven't seen the new one and you don't want to hear any spoilers, if you haven't seen the old one and you don't want to hear any spoilers, save this one. Go watch those first. But I am going to be giving some pretty big spoilers probably in this video. So right off the bat, guys, the Japanese edition or the Japanese version of this film, Josee the Tiger and the Fish, has a much brighter tone to it. Is actually, I would describe it as quirky, a little bit eccentric. It was actually a bit more sexual in nature. That was, I guess, pretty nice. But just talking about the brighter aspect, you can go straight to like Josee's home where she's living. First of all, she seems a lot less poor, but the light is coming through the windows, like things are just brighter. And that kind of helped to give it a little bit of a lighter mood. Like I said, the Korean version was heavy. It was dark. Josee in that film was pretty morbid. In this one, she was much more childlike. Like I said, just quirky. You could see her like wearing wigs, and she would get kind of excited at times. Just a little bit more of a person that you might be able to connect to. The character Josee in the Japanese one also has a name, a Japanese name, Kumiko, and the man character Sueno in the Japanese version actually knows that that's Josee is not her real name. So that was just kind of an interesting difference. But I think this has to do with how they wanted to present the pasts of Josee in both films. And forgive me if I'm wrong, because I cannot say that I 100% understood every little nook and cranny of the Korean version, but the Japanese version, there's much less mystery surrounding the past of Josee. She was just disabled, like pretty much for most of her life. The grandmother says that they went to some doctors. It's just kind of a mystery, her condition a little bit. But the Korean version, they really kind of made her like have a really rough upbringing. There was a story that she had like poisoned the principal at the orphanage, and she was like on the run, and this old lady actually kind of just took her in, and so she was hiding her from, you know, being caught. So it wasn't really her grandmother. Now, I could be wrong on that one, so please correct me if you've seen this. It wasn't super clear, but like I said, the Korean one, they were kind of really fluid about her imagination and making up stories a bit more than in the Japanese one. But it was very clear that the grandmother was her grandmother in the original. And one of the reasons why I think they might have made this distinction or this difference was that the grandmother in the Japanese version really beats Josee down and really beats her self-esteem into the dirt for being disabled. And maybe that's just a bit more of a sign of the times. Maybe they can't kind of do that. It was a little bit more sensitive these days. So they really kind of avoid harping on her disability in the Korean version of this. I was kind of surprised just how much they focused on her disability in the original. So the grandmother would say things like, she's damaged goods. Why would any kind of capable man be interested in you? You're only going to bring them trouble. Don't even think about it. So I understood the Josee character in the our Japanese original much, much more because she was having this like psychological damage from her grandmother. It was just super old fashioned about it, I guess. But that's not in the Korean version. So I guess they wanted to sort of explain her damage like in a different way. The grandmother was actually pretty sweet and nice in the Korean edition. So maybe that's the reason why they made up that story about her like hiding, because they didn't want to say, like the Japanese one, she was being hidden because the grandmother was so ashamed of her disability. So again, that was just kind of a surprising difference. But I think the biggest difference overall between these two films, and it was my major gripe with the Korean version, was that the Korean version does not give a lot of incentive for this man Young-suk to really try to win Josee's heart, because they don't really present Josee in a very lovable way. She's very kind of cold in the Korean version, and in the Japanese one, they've got the man whose name is Sueno kind of like fishing for smiles and actually getting smiles. He's enjoys her food like a lot, so he really likes going there for the food, even though it's like this super simple little meal that she makes. It just made a lot more sense of this busy world that the man in the film, Sueno, he's kind of like, he doesn't really have an intense focus on how he's going to move forward with his life. He's kind of like weighing his options, and all of a sudden he sees this girl Josee like with this life that he had never imagined. It's much smaller, so it's the opposite of everything he's experienced. And I can see the draw a little bit more in the Japanese one. Like, this girl, there's something magical about this girl that he really wanted to get to know. That did not come across in the Korean one very much at all for me. So they actually have a lot of fun together in the Japanese one. So this is spoiler territory, guys. There's a scene where, it's the same in both of them, where Josee tells the man, Young-suk or Sueno, go and never come back. But, he comes back, and they like, that's when they start this dating life together. And the dating life in the Japanese one was like fun. Like, they're racing around, and he's pushing her cart, and they're laughing, they're smiling. The dating one in the Korean was just like, the Young-suk, the man, he's like fixing stuff, and she's inside smiling, reading a book. So I was like, why is he doing this? Like, he doesn't seem like he's having fun. It was just more like he felt sorry for her rather than, he was really having fun with her. He did not seem like he was having fun with her in the Korean one. So this was another major, major difference. The Korean version of the film, after they begin the relationship between Josee and Young-suk, they do a title card 5 years later, and they cut to this adventure, Scotland. They're on this trip together that Josee always wanted to go there, and you're just like, oh my God, this is a beautiful couple. I can't believe they made it this long. And they hit you really hard when Young-suk's like fades away. Like, I'm thinking The Call, what? Like, he's not even real? Like, this didn't happen? And it's kind of in Josee's mind. It's another one of the things she created. So clearly they broke up. What happened in those 5 years? You're going to have to watch the Japanese edition to really find out, because the Japanese one does not cut 5 years into the future. It cuts only 1 year, and they are deep into their relationship. So again, still having fun. They're actually on a road trip. They're doing some unique things, but this road trip is extremely important for their relationship, because it is the time that Sueno, the man, starts to kind of feel like Josee's being a little bit of a burden on him, and he's kind of getting annoyed with some of her idiosyncrasies. Like, he doesn't really like that cute wonder of her is kind of getting on his nerves a little bit, and he's reflecting on maybe what he passed up on with his beautiful, university capable girlfriend that he had. So he actually does have a chance encounter. We see the chance encounter that he has with her, and it kind of gets him even thinking a little bit more. But he is about to introduce Josee to his parents, and we do see that it is the man Sueno who chickens out, and he's like, I don't want to go through with this. And he's the one that decides it's over. So there's also a really kind of important scene, I think. I guess they could have thrown it away, but it's when Josee actually meets Sueno's girlfriend in the street, and his girlfriend is devastated that he left her for this woman who's disabled, and she's like, how could this happen to me? And they kind of have a little slapping contest, but it's just so much more complete, their relationship, and how they decide to come to that conclusion of breaking up. And both of them, I feel like they do a great job that either way that you want to look at it, whether Young-suk or Sueno, the man, is good or bad, that both of them are really kind of like an angel to Josee. And for this small time in their life, something that really brought them out of the darkness, this bleak existence that they had been living. And it really helped them to find their footing to move forward into the world. So I think both of the films present that very well, but the Korean one, we just like go see the scene that they broke up, and we're like, what happened? Like, why? So it had me thinking that the moment in the Korean one that Young-suk walks away after she tells him, don't ever come back. I told you, do not come back here. I interpreted it like he walked away. And then when the film shows him stop and turn around and come back to Josee after the film was over, I interpreted that to be in Josee's head, because she was just imagining all of this. And whether she imagined it or not, I think is not so important. I kind of like to think that she imagined it because it makes her character a little bit more sad or more interesting. But that relationship in her mind, or what really transpired, was the important thing. So to get her out. So I think it was overall better presented and more complete in the Japanese one. But the drama, like as a drama film, the Korean one is stronger, just like visually, and just it was just heavier, like serious. The Japanese one was was lighter overall, the tone in the film, so it was definitely a little bit more enjoyable. All of the core characters are there. They're just presented in a pretty different way. So I would probably rate the original Josee the Tiger and the Fish an 8 out of 10. It was really, really good. So I would recommend checking it out for sure. But whether or not you wanted to do what I did and watch the Korean one first or the Japanese one second, it's going to have to be up to you. But they are interestingly very different. And I'm curious to know, this is kind of a spoilers discussion. I'm curious to know your interpretation on the Korean one when you do see it, because there's something about it where I just feel like a lot of the relationship might have been in Josee's mind. So just curious there. I think a lot of people disagree with me that I brought it up with so far. Also, the whole tiger and the fish were much better presented symbolically in the Japanese version, because they were sort of markers for Josee's evolution in her relationship. She actually sees a real tiger. They go to the zoo, and she says she always wanted to see the scariest thing when she knew she was secure and with the person that she really loved. So that was kind of like the beginning, or the marking that she found the person that she really loved. She can now finally see the scariest thing. In the Korean one, she sort of hallucinates this tiger outside the window right after they solidify the relationship. And that to me was sort of speaking more towards the things that Josee was kind of making up in her mind, maybe a little bit more about her exterior, her spirit as being a little bit more fierce or strong. And I don't know, it just kind of spoke a little bit more of her imagination, and just a part of her character. Her exterior was very kind of scary, but The fish part was kind of the mark of both of them, like their breakup. But also you could see it kind of like, the freedom of the fish and swimming around and everything. But yeah, it was definitely the beginning and the end of the relationship. But I think it was presented a bit better in the Japanese one, so I can kind of see why they would not include those names in the Korean title. All right, so that's going to be it for this one. Hope this one helped you guys out, or just wanted those of you who wanted to hear more about more on my thoughts on the differences between these two. But again, I would definitely recommend seeing both of them. As far as just I'm kind of doing more Korean films on this channel, I do think this film Josee was a very strong Korean drama film that you can see this year. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thanks again for watching. As always, until next time, I'm Tyler at The Movie Beat. Keep watching movies.